Let me see. Well, one of them is, how would you respond to a student who says there is so much evil in the world, God cannot exist? And my note in my page was, which God? I mean, we have a certain, this is where the Western Christian bias comes in. We inherit the notion that God is omnipotent and all-loving and capable of doing anything. And this is really a philosophical idea that comes out of the Greco-Roman world, but really infiltrates Western religious thought in the Middle Ages, and Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it might be, such a God might be a necessary existent, as Anselm thought, and others. But as Pascal noticed, it's not the God of religion. It's a philosophical God. It's a conceptual structure which functions ideologically to account for all things in a hierarchy of being. But it's not where reality is. It's not where real people live. And we live in a world in which we suffer. And God doesn't prevent suffering. He helps you deal with suffering. In personal piety, as people are pious, people might pray to God to prevent suffering, but when suffering comes, people lean upon God, however they imagine God. And God is the one that allows you to endure suffering. And the test of a religious person's religiosity, of their piety, is whether God is there in their suffering. If he's not, and they feel abandoned, then that's a profound problem for religious faith. Not that they are suffering, but that God has abandoned me in my suffering. People who live in that terrible place are in a crisis. But as we know from the history of religions and from daily experience, there are many people who find tremendous strength in the midst of their suffering through the perception that God is present and guiding them, however that God might be imagined, as Christ, as the God of Israel, as Allah, whoever. So evil, the problem of evil is not a real issue, I think, for religion as much as it is for theology or philosophy. The issue for religion is, where is God in the midst of my pain? And if God is not here now, then what do I do? And that's why people go for pastoral counseling, to their priests, to their rabbis, to whoever is their religious authority. When they cannot bear their suffering and they find an absence of divine healing in that suffering, then they're in crisis, and then they need consolation. And the pastor, whoever is playing that role, is the one who has to mediate the experience of God to them, or the presence of God. So that's how I see the problem of evil.